following video is not made for kids. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello to my subscribers, this is the TFNG coming to you with a review, and today we are going to be taking a look at a Transformers figure that I honestly almost forgot that I had because of where I had pushed it off to the side before I could get around to reviewing it. So without further delay, let's take a look at the Transformers Studio Series 86 G1 movie Voyager class Junkion on Junkheap, or Junkyard, as he was originally named by Hasbro. So yes, for those of you guys wondering, this guy was originally named Junkyard when he appeared on the pages of the Transformers comic books when Hasbro decided to expand the cast of Junkions from just Wreck-Gar with other Junkions to having ones with other individual names and identities, and Junkyard was one of the first ones to be given a proper name and background information and become a fleshed out Transformers character. In more recent years, Hasbro has been unable to get a registered trademark to the name Junkyard, so they changed the second half of his name from Junkyard to Junkheap, which is the name he's more famous for having today. In the year since then, there's been several Junkions who've been given names and identities, such as Scrap Heap, and then it's been announced that next year, in year 2 of the Legacy line, and there is going to be another Junkion that transforms into a battered up and patched together, rebuilt Mad Max style pickup truck named Scrap Hook that's being released in the Legacy line. So we're getting more Junkion Transformers characters, so that's pretty nice to see here, and that it appears not all of the Junkions are going to be mold mates with Wreck-Gar, which was the common case in the past. So one of the reasons why those of you guys wondering why I'm trying to talk so fast, I'm trying to hurry and get the review finished so I don't babble on, because I have a brief announcement here at the start of the review that this video is being recorded 2 days before Thanksgiving of 2022 here in the United States, and that means there's only 1.5 months left in the year 2022, and I looked at my list of Transformers figures that I still have to make video reviews of, and I have at least 20 of them to go. Oh, and some of those Transformers figures are multi-packs that have several Transformers figures inside the same box, so if I were to count individual numbers, I still have roughly 30 individual Transformers action figures to get through reviewing, so I'm going to try and see over the next 2 weeks if I can kick it into overdrive with trying to get the reviews done. So bringing focus here back to Junkheap, or Junkyard, as I'm going to try and call him throughout the rest of the review. He is a retool of the Studio Series 86 Voyager class Wreck-Gar figure that was released earlier this year. Wreck-Gar has become one of the more well-liked and well-received Voyager class figures from the Studio Series 86 line. So here you got some artwork of Junkyard in his robot mode, and it's a pretty impressive looking artwork there. I'm actually glad that unlike the box art, he is not yelling. I prefer when Transformers action figures have neutral expressions on their faces, because you can leave it up to your imagination when they're feeling different emotions when you take your Transformers figures out and mess around with them. There's a close-up of that image of Junkyard's face. There's an even closer look-up of his face there, so he is screaming at something. I don't know if it's that he's screaming at the Decepticons to get off of planet Junk, or if he's screaming at the Autobots to help fight off the Decepticons. That's left up to your own interpretation. So you got the Transformers Generation 1 movie logo here on the top of the box. The Generation 1 movie was released in the year 1986, and on this side of the box, Junkyard is the 14th Transformers figure to be released in the Studio Series 86 line. So it's amazing to me that Junkyard is the 14th figure to be released in this line. Considering how few of the Studio Series Transformers figures have been of the Generation 1 characters. That's amazing. Amazing that with Junkyard here, they've gotten at least 14 out. I think there's been 2 more that have been released since Junkyard was released. There's Leader Class Sludge and Deluxe Class RC. Coming on here, the back of the box, you got Junkyard in his robot mode, and in his motorcycle mode, and he transforms back and forth between both modes in 22 steps. And his one-sentence bio read, Junkyard leads the efforts to piece together the remains of Ultra Magnus. So they're basically implying that he was one of the Junkions who helped the Autobots get Ultra Magnus put back together after the Decepticons blasted him to bits. So without further delay, let's get this guy out of his box and take a close look at him in robot mode. Alright, and one thing I wanted to share with you guys, I don't know how well my camera's going to pick it up, but here's one of the reasons why I hate open window packaging. I don't know how you guys can see in there, but yeah, a spider crawled in here and left a bunch of cobwebs here on Junkheap's box. I couldn't really see it until I opened it up, so that is very disappointing to see. So even if you do find a secure place to put your Transformers action figures in, if it's in an open space, a spider will crawl into it and leave cobwebs for you to pick up. So I'm really hoping that a spider doesn't jump out while I'm unboxing Junkyard here off camera. So hopefully nothing happens. Alright, thankfully there weren't any spiders living in the box. The cobwebs were abandoned, which is what abandoned webs are. They're cobwebs. After they start collecting dust, they're creatures that don't stick around. So without further delay, let's get back to looking at Junkheap or Junkyard. Here he is in his robot mode, and he is pretty impressive looking. I love the amount of retooled parts that were done here on him. It really helps to distinguish him from Wreck-Gar, along with his new paint job of being mostly brown and gray. One thing that I think is kind of a disappointment is that his wheels are the exact same wheels that came with Wreck-Gar. I wish they would have at least done the hubcaps a different color, or maybe done the tires solid black instead of the same shade of gray that was used on Studio Series Wreck-Gar. But regardless, overall, out of the box, he's a pretty decent looking Voyager class Transformers figure. And for a size comparison, here is Junkheap next to Studio Series Wreck-Gar. So there was a lot of retooled parts that were done on here, particularly in the robot mode torso. The shoulders are new. I believe the legs, everything about the figure from the waist down is exactly the same. Same hands even. The lower arms are new sculpting as well. As you can see in there, he's got more rounded arms, whereas Wreck-Gar has more square-shaped arms with looks like arm pads built on him. On here, there's a lot more spikes. As incredible as it sounds, for the amount of spikes that are found on Wreck-Gar, Junkheap has even more. That's pretty great. I love the new head sculpt used on him. I love how he's got a set of it looks like going by the overall shape of them, it looks like Hasbro and Tomy tried to give the illusion that Junkheap's handlebars from his motorcycle mode end up on the back of his head and end up transforming into a pair of horns. It's similar to what the designers did with Wreck-Gar, where it looks like the windshield of his motorcycle mode ends up becoming the top of his head. So that's pretty deep. So that's pretty nice touch there, that they try to make it look like the handlebars end up here on the side of the head, acting as a pair of horns. So one thing about Wreck-Gar that's been removed that fans have been questioning is his chest cannons right here. Those are gone on Junkheap, the retooled torso. He now has a pair of exhaust. I believe it's supposed to be fuel pipes hanging off of his chest, but it is a pretty decent looking thing. And unlike Wreck-Gar, where there's a fear of those breaking off, you don't have that there on Junkheap. Although when you transform him into motorcycle mode, his horns end up having to fold into the back of his head. So I believe they're on ball joints. Ball joints are actually, no, they're swivel joints, so just be mindful of that. And one thing you can also do is have him hold the four-bladed axe weapon in a different hand to just further distinguish him from Wreck-Gar. And two of the new accessory pieces that Junkheap has, and I believe they are removable, is that he has a pair of lower arm shields here hanging off of him. You can take those out if you want, but I think it also helps to further distinguish Junkheap from Wreck-Gar by having his both of his wheels hanging off of his knees, whereas Wreck-Gar has his wheels. He has one on one knee and one hanging off of his arm, so the wheels end up on the same side of his body. So it's very subtle how a few alternate changes in transformations and a few retool parts can make the figures look even more distinctive than they would otherwise normally be. And for one last special size comparison, here is Studio Series 86 Junkheap with the first action figure of him to ever be released, the Transformers Generations 2011 Deluxe Class Junkheap figure. So back in 2011, Evan, in the last wave of the original line of Transformers Generations, one of the two final deluxe figures released in the original Generations line back in 2011 was Junkheap, who was a retool of the also released in 2011 deluxe class Wreck-Gar figure that was released in the Reveal the Shield line. And Transformers fans and collectors everywhere were amazed when Hasbro announced that another Junkion besides Wreck-Gar was being given a deluxe class figure back in 2011, and it amazes me that I've had this figure since then. So, for those of you guys wondering, the Studio Series Voyager class figure is not the first action figure that Junkheap has been given by Hasbro and Takara Tomy. They did a deluxe class one back in 2011, and despite having the deluxe figure for the last 11 years, and I've been exposed to the Studio Series Wreck-Gar figure that this Voyager class figure is mold mates with for just 6 months, I can honestly say that transforming this deluxe class figure is a bigger pain than this Voyager class figure. Some of the joints on the deluxe class Junkies figure are super tight, and the way you transform some of them, there's stress marks on some spots. Spots in some parts feel like they're going to snap off even when you do transform them in the correct way. So the Voyager class figure is a nice upgrade to this deluxe class figure due to having a much more simplistic transformation. And another thing to note about this Generations deluxe class Junkheap figure is that the only retooled part that distinguishes it from Wreck-Gar is having a different head sculpt. Everything else about it is the exact same sculpting. So it is nice that a lot more retooled parts were done here on the new Voyager class figure of Junkheap released in 2022, to distinguish him from Wreck-Gar. Unlike the deluxe figures from 2011, Hasbro and Takara Tomy decided that a new head sculpt will be enough and just repaint the figure with more detailing and call it a day. So a lot more effort was put into Junkheap this time around compared to 11 years ago. This deluxe class figure of Junkheap even has Wreck-Gar's chest cannons right here. Cannons right there, they're done in yellow plastic. So you can, if you want, because they have even these two versions of Junkheap, they do have distinguished head sculpts, whereas this one has the handlebar horns on the side of his head, and he doesn't have any facial hair. And the way his eyes are sculpted, it looks like he has a pair of goggles. The Generations Deluxe Class Junkheap figure, he has an actual mustache. He doesn't have a goatee like Wreck-Gar, but that is Wreck-Gar, but they do have slightly different head sculpts from each other, so if you want to, you could use these figures as different Junkions. You could call this figure by Junkheap's original name, Junkyard, and you can have this Voyager class figure be Junkheap, so it is nice. So it is an option you have if you want these figures to be separate Junkions from each other. So that's pretty much all I have to say about Junkheap, apart from appearing inside on the pages of Transformers comic books. Like most of the Junkions who aren't Wreck-Gar, he hasn't been too prominent of a Transformers character, but I do not regret getting this new Voyager class figure of him because, again, as I said, the Generations Deluxe class figure is a bit of a pain to transform, and it is nice to have another action figure of a Junkion that is not Wreck-Gar. And overall, I really enjoy how he came out. For those of you guys wondering, before we actually transform him into his alt mode, the joint, I have the same even though he's fresh out of the box, holding him in my hands. The joints on Wreck-Gar that were loose, they're the same here on Junkheap. None of the joints were really fixed. The only joints on Junkheap that feel somewhat tighter than they are on Wreck-Gar is the ball joint that holds his head in place. It's a little more loose on Wreck-Gar here, but everything else is the same. The swivel joint in the waist is somewhat loose on both of these guys. The legs are very wobbly despite the joints in the hips, the thighs, and the knees being swivel and hinge joints. Same thing with the feet. So the overall quality of the joints on Junkheap, it's the exact same as it is on Wreck-Gar. So if any of you guys were wondering if Junkheap might have slightly tighter joints and it would be easier to get him into more action poses in robot mode than it is with Studio Series Wreck-Gar, it's about the same. And between both figures. So without further delay, let's get this guy transformed into his motorcycle mode. Alright, so here is Junkheap transformed into his motorcycle mode. And one difference that it offers compared to Wreck-Gar is the two arm shields end up acting as side panels, and also Junkheap, and it makes his motorcycle mode a lot more stable than Wreck-Gar's does. They are sculpted differently. On this side, there's additional sculpting detailing for exhaust pipes / laser guns on this side compared to this side, and it is a much more stable motorcycle compared to Wreck-Gar. Whereas Wreck-Gar here relies solely on the pegs where his robot mode feet end up sitting there on the fuel tank. And to keep that's what Wreck-Gar is dependent on for his motorcycle mode to keep together. But for Junkheap here are these extra arm panels. There's extra pegs right there that attach to the sides of his robot mode feet, and it allows the motorcycle to be much more stable. It is a nice addition there. And of course, he does have the two kickstands here, so he can have stability when he's on a flat surface. Because the spiked wheels on the motorcycle mode don't offer any stability for these figures. Yeah, overall, I really enjoy how a difference in paint job and a few sculpted parts can make Junkheap and Wreck-Gar. At first glance, they don't look like they're entirely identical motorcycles compared to each other, so that's really impressive of Hasbro and Takara Tomy to design that. Another thing you can do is have the axes in different positions. I've noticed the axe being upside down with the staff pointing upwards is, for some reason, on Wreck-Gar it's much more stable. On Junkheap, I think the 3mm port that it attaches to, it's just stronger on Junkheap. But then, one thing you can do if you want, when you have the axe upside down, the four-bladed axe itself is in a position where it looks like there's a turbine propeller pushing the motorcycle along, so that's really fun to see. And of course, for one last size comparison, here is Studio Series 86 Voyager class Junkheap next to his Generations 2011 action figure. And again, these do have different paint jobs from each other. Some of the similarities include the yellow hubcaps, gray on the windshield sections, but other than that, whatever similarities these guys have is outweighed by the differences between the two of them. So I really like how you could have these be separate Junkions if you desire, due to the different paint jobs. And overall, I do have to confess, I believe that Junkheap is a much better motorcycle, and overall he's a much more fun action figure than Wreck-Gar is, even though I have a lot more nostalgia for Wreck-Gar as a Transformers character. Feels like whatever flaws Wreck-Gar had, Hasbro and Takara Tomy tried to fix it here on Junkheap, and they did do it successfully. One difference to note about Junkheap and Wreck-Gar is that the handlebars, despite being the same shape, they're actually in different orientations, which is another nice further distinction between both action figures. Wreck-Gar's handlebars, well, you can see, but Wreck-Gar's handlebars, they slope downward slightly, and on Junkheap, it's the opposite. His handlebars are pointing upward, so that's upward. But the handlebars themselves, they are different shapes, so it looks like at the factory they warped the plastic holding it onto the sides of the figure into different orientations, so that's pretty impressive to see that. So for my final thoughts, do I recommend getting Junkheap and adding him to your Transformers collection? Absolutely, I do. If you have the Studio Series 86 Voyager class Wreck-Gar figure, then Junkheap is a must-have Transformers figure. The motorcycle is impressive looking in its own right, and the new side panels here allow for more stability in motorcycle mode. mode, and overall, I just enjoy how this figure turned out. So thank you guys all so much. This has been the TFN Geek, and next time, you guys stay safe, stay healthy, transform and roll out. Goodbye, everyone.